Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, your one-stop shop for all news West Asia. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I am the head of news for the Cradle, and as usual, I am joined by my colleagues, content creator and writer for the Cradle, Karim Shami, and columnist and editor for the Cradle, Sharmeen Narwani. Many things happening, not just in West Asia, but across the world, really, since the inauguration of Donald Trump as U.S. president. The one that is going to possibly make all the headlines this week, Netanyahu's visit to Washington. He landed there yesterday. He's set to meet with Donald Trump. According to some reports, I believe it's tomorrow that his meeting is set to take place. This comes 2 weeks into the ceasefire in Gaza, a ceasefire that has been holding, that has given us many images and many that have been interpreted as an Israeli defeat, right? I was watching the episode you guys recorded last week, and your commentary was very on point about the destruction of the Israeli victories, right? What Hamas is projecting. But as far as Netanyahu and Trump, what do you guys think we can expect out of this meeting, right? Netanyahu is going to become the first head of state to visit the U.S. since Trump came to office. So I think that's already a pretty big signal of where things stand.
I think we can expect that, Washington pundits and journalists will frame the trip as a very successful one and point out all the pluses and ignore the minuses or the difficulties in achieving whatever agenda they agree on. The narrative setting will be a big part of what comes out of this trip. And so one will have to start reading between the lines. We know a little bit about what they're going to discuss. I think Netanyahu said so himself prior to his trip. He said, we'll discuss critical issues, including achieving victory over Hamas, securing the release of all the hostages, and dealing with the Iranian axis. And he framed this as, what we will be doing in the aftermath of a war that has radically changed West Asia. What the Israeli media is saying, I mean, there's a Haaretz article yesterday that I think sums up a lot of what we consider are probably main points that will be discussed in their meeting. And, they will for sure be discussing phase 2 of the ceasefire, because as things stand, I think yesterday was...
Today, actually, it was the day.
Today, 16th day after the first ceasefire goes into effect, the second one is supposed to be negotiated. And thus far, there doesn't seem to be negotiators sitting in Doha. Yeah,
but they're saying that maybe Netanyahu delayed it until after his meeting with Trump.
Well, for sure, but he also sidelined, the guys who were meeting in previous rounds, the head of Mossad and the head of Shin Bet, who were leading those negotiations. Let's not forget, in the interim, he's named a new army chief of staff. We don't know that much about him yet, but we can guarantee that he will be all for militarization and continuing wars on multiple fronts. The other thing that will be on their agenda is normalization. So the expansion of the Abraham Accords, which Trump established in 2020, with the UAE heading sort of the Arab countries that would then normalize with Israel. The big get for the Zionists, for the Israelis, for the U.S. administration will be Saudi-Israeli normalization. Saudi, of course, being the custodian of the two holiest places in Islam, Mecca and Medina, and a major funder of many Muslim countries. So they think this is going to be, we're told this is going to be high on the agenda. We're also told by Haaretz that the Saudis and Israelis have already agreed on most aspects of the deal. Don't let this freak people out, because there are many aspects in which there are no problems. It is the problematic parts and terms that will always keep these guys at odds, right? Where deal from getting done. And one of those is the fact that the Saudis have said from the get-go that we will not normalize unless there is, a clear path to Palestinian statehood, if not a state being established. So, of course, we don't see how that could be possible, especially with the West Bank now being a target of massive Israeli military,
The escalation.
escalation, correct. Some of the things that probably were agreed on in the past were, the Saudis want a domestic nuclear program. The U.S. will probably provide them with the reactors for electricity generation under strict oversight. The Saudis wanted a defense pact with the U.S. in which the U.S., if Saudi Arabia was attacked, let's say from Yemen, let's say from Qatar, Iran, okay, that the U.S. would be obligated to come to its defense. Nobody in the United States government wants to be obligated to the Saudis under a pact like that. So that was one of the holdups from before. The war on Gaza remains a big obstacle for this because Saudi Arabia will want all hostilities halted, the establishment of new rule there, and then the West Bank, of course, becoming the foundation of the Palestinian state. These little side bits are not insignificant. They're the meat of this, which is basically, since Oslo, Israel sidetracking all Palestinian national aspirations, pretending it was upholding a peace agreement, and in fact, taking more territory, more land grabs, more dispossession of homes and land and agricultural lands, etc., olive groves, etc., by Palestinians. And the establishment of many, many more Jewish settlements in Palestinian territory. So that, the obstacles are significant. Israel also will want a firm U.S. declaration commitment to Hamas not remaining in power in Gaza. And this is going to be a hard get because who exactly is going to unseat Hamas? Like after the ceasefire was struck, it's so astounding that everywhere within no time, everywhere in the Gaza Strip, including in the, basically demolished northern Gaza Strip, Hamas fighters in their, uniforms were everywhere on the ground, and Hamas security forces. And so this is so funny. The Palestinian Authority, which is completely aiding and abetting Israel's demolition of Palestinian refugee camps and towns and villages and infrastructure and hospitals in the West Bank, is demanding that, in fact, insisting to the Americans and anyone who will listen that they are going to, they want to take over Gaza, and they are willing to fight Hamas to do so. Now, Israel and the United States, and the Western Alliance have just spent 15 months fighting Hamas. Couldn't win against them, okay? The Palestinian Authority, whose popularity numbers are in the single digits in the areas they control, is going to take over the West Bank and fight the Palestinian resistance. It's comic. Like, the Americans are not taking that seriously. So they're looking for solutions. We actually did a report not too long ago on what the various parties in the region would like to see. I mean, some would like Arab forces in there to maintain security. It may just be that whatever is devised will still have Hamas elements in control, but a face-saving exit for the Americans, for the Israelis. I don't know how this is going to work out. There's no Arab armies that can take them on. There's no UN forces that can take them on. You're going to put the U.S. boots on the ground there? I seriously doubt it. Not with Trump.
I think this is why we're hearing so much about these U.S. mercenary groups, right? Yeah. That they keep talking about bringing them into Gaza. There was a report months ago about them running the humanitarian zones, right? You want all of these mercs, right, running humanitarian aid into the most devastated place on earth. As I want to go back to what you, because you mentioned what's happening in the West Bank, and I think this is interesting also in regards to the Trump.
Yeah.
Well, I think regarding the visit of Netanyahu, I think he went there for Iran because according to Netanyahu, he accomplished whatever he wants with the Arab states and the resistance in the Arab world, except for Iran. I think he wants the next phase for the United States to handle Iran, because Israel alone can't handle Iran. Because regarding the West Bank, it was said in the media, in the Western media, and by the Israelis, that Trump agrees on whatever the Israelis want to do in the West Bank. Regarding the Syrians in Julan, yesterday Israel withdraw from some places, and I think they will remain there. There's no pressure that will come from Trump, I think, for them to retreat. And in Lebanon, we have to wait and see the prime minister, which ministers he will elect, and after that we will understand more if Netanyahu demanded anything. I think the main point will be Iran, and I think they will ignore Yemen and they will focus on Iran. That's how I see it.
So there is discussion in Pentagon and other circles about creating an ISIS-like or ISIS-style coalition to deal with Yemen. I don't know if anything will come of that, but we can note, for instance, U.S. airstrikes on alleged ISIS fighters in a mountain range across in Somalia or across Somaliland, which is on the Gulf of Aden, which is across the road from Yemen. So that is probably part of paving the way for U.S. military base, U.S. military or U.S. naval presence in or near Somalia, and very possibly in Somaliland, which Trump has said before he became president that he would recognize, the only state that would do so after 31 years of Somaliland's independence. So the Israelis have lamented that they hadn't paid attention to Yemen sufficiently. And so we can expect a step above that. Among the many things they'll discuss, I agree with you, Karim. In Netanyahu's mind, Iran is number one. Iran is the head of the snake, as he likes to say. The thing is that, Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei pointed out in a recent speech that Gaza basically defeated the U.S. military, meaning, and then you're going to come for us. Iran, of course, in the last few weeks, we've seen have showcased a number of things, further underground military cities and installations, the launching of a new missile that goes a considerable distance, naval capabilities. They've disclosed underground cities under the seawaters, right? Underground installations under seawaters. Many little tidbits like this, obviously to deter the Americans and Israelis from going confrontational. We've yet to see if Trump's diplomatic soundings on Iran actually, this must frighten Netanyahu more than anything, that Trump would like to do a deal and get rid of the Iran problem, clear his table from the Iran problem and move on to other things more pressing. And Netanyahu's not going to want that to happen. But Trump has now had experience of Netanyahu in his first term. And as he's pointed out, Netanyahu never damn called me after I lost the election, not once even. And so we'll see. We're yet to see how this goes. But just be assured that Netanyahu will spin the Washington meeting like literally a massive global plan was hatched. And Netanyahu takes, much credit for it and swaying the foreign policy agenda of the new administration, and everything's going to be hunky-dory. He does have to spin this to a certain extent to placate the more extremist members of his cabinet, right, who want a restarting of the war in Gaza and the annexation of the West Bank and the complete occupation of Gaza as well. So there's going to be a lot of bullshit spun in the following weeks.
But here's what's interesting, and I don't know, I want to hear you guys' take on it. A few days ago, Trump, or someone in the Trump White House, apparently, called Israel that there's considerations to removing U.S. troops from Syria finally, right, where they grew overnight. They multiplied from 900 to about 2,000 a few weeks ago, according to the Pentagon. Trump, as you're saying, he knows Netanyahu from his first administration. Doesn't seem to be a lot of not a lot of love lost between those two, I think, at certain points. And Trump is coming in with a bit of a vengeance, right? We're seeing what's happening with the U.S. Agency for International Development, that at this point is essentially being treated like a criminal organization by the U.S. government. They want to just shutter it, get rid of it, with good reason. I think we've talked enough about how the USAID works as the soft power arm of the intelligence community. And now you consider these rumors about Syria and what's happening in Syria as well, right? With the self-appointment of a president, the HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the former Al-Qaeda in Syria, names a president, Ahmad al-Shara, former ISIS commander Abu Mohammed al-Julani, who was yesterday in Saudi Arabia, his first official visit outside of the country, who is going tomorrow to Turkey to be meeting President Erdogan. And you start to wonder, is Donald Trump going to just continue to expand wars, or is he going to use them to leverage a better position for the U.S.? Because right now, I don't know. I feel like the coin is still up in the air. Yeah, economically, he seems to be willing to start wars everywhere. Armed wars, I don't know. It seems like there's still some pushback, at least from his own decision making, right? I don't know about the hawks that he put in his government, starting with Marco Rubio.
He cares about the dollars spent, okay? So in his view, economic wars are way cheaper than military ones. I don't know if he's going to remove 2,000 U.S. troops from Syria. People backtracked from that statement.
It was very quick, yeah.
Yeah, it was a very quick backtrack. We've yet to see. We were hearing today from unnamed Turkish sources that Turkey has plans to establish 2 military bases in Syria's north. So, I mean, does the U.S. even need to be there when their NATO partner is, even though they're at odds with each other? Trump, when he talked twice about removing U.S. troops from Syria in his first administration, didn't seem to give a damn about the Kurds and the U.S.'s long-held Kurdish autonomy projects in the region. So that could be a game changer in what happens from the Levant to the Persian Gulf. So Turkey, Syria, Iraq, again, big Kurdish populations in those countries. Trump is, there's a way to flip, there are many ways to flip U.S. power, or to extend U.S. power without spending as much money. And I mean, just, with Greenland, he's going for resource grab with tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and other allies. He's going for, trade dollars, right? It's all about increasing his coffers, American coffers. Why he would do anything, why he would spend money on a war, given what we're seeing. The whole USAID thing was to just pull out billions of dollars out of useless programs and put it back into U.S. coffers, right? So I don't see him really pushing for wars unless it's going to add to the American bottom line. And sort of the continuation of war in Gaza or beginning of one with Iran certainly wouldn't help in that regard. And I don't think he holds Netanyahu in the same esteem as he did in his first administration. And we will see. There's too many unknowns yet. And Trump has been very good. I mean, he does talk a lot. He does, post on social media a lot. At points, it seems like his every thought. But as a businessman and a deal maker, someone who takes pride and has written a book called Art of the Deal, the guy holds many cards close to his chest. And we are not going to find out until we find out. But looking at the larger patterns, he wants to save American dollars for the U.S., Americans, and not have to expend it overseas. He will let others do it. Israel, unfortunately, is becoming a welfare child of the U.S. government. And that's also going to be in his sights. If you don't have wars, you don't need as much money from us. So just suck it up.
He canceled the foreign aid. They did make like the one exception was Israel, right?
And Egypt. And that is, by the way, that's not at all surprising. That's always been the case. Even when there are government shutdowns, et cetera, that foreign aid continues. unrestricted because it's so essential in the minds of the U.S. National security community.
For Egypt.
I think also Jordan. I think they forgot Jordan and they will return back because I just want to say Trump clearly he has no idea what he's doing. For instance, he canceled like $50 million aid, as he said, for condoms to Gaza, and he thought it was going to Gaza, Palestine, but it was going to a like city in East Africa, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Masterminding what happened in colleges in the United States. So he clearly has no idea what he's doing, and this is very dangerous. And of course, he will accept and believe whatever Netanyahu tells him without even fact-checking. That's what I think will happen. And he will follow the orders of Netanyahu. That's at least what I can think.
That's not what we saw with Witkoff's visit, Stephen Witkoff, his envoy, who sort of, bulldozed his way through the final points of negotiation in the first round of the ceasefire. The guy imposed himself on the Israelis.
Yes, but why did he stop the war? Because in his mind, Trump said it more than once, Israel has lost the PR war and it should stop the war because in his mind he's doing a favor to Israel. For him, he's seeing something that the Israelis are not seeing. That's why he stopped the war.
Conceivably, he would want the war to continue being stopped. He would want the ceasefire to continue. That is not what Netanyahu wants. And this is the point. Let's see who comes out of this round, because Netanyahu will want freedom of action in Gaza, unrestricted in the way he's trying to establish in Lebanon.
Trump, in his eyes, Israel is losing the PR war. Trump doesn't care about Netanyahu. He cares about the existence of Israel. The war was not good for the existence of Israel.
But didn't you say he's going to listen to everything Netanyahu says?
Yeah, because Netanyahu represents Israel. So there's like Israel, the danger of Israel, not Netanyahu. What's dangerous for Israel is Iran. I think they are willing to go to war with Iran, despite all what what Trump says.
You think the U.S. is?
Maybe the U.S., they will force Saudi Arabia to fight. I don't know what they will do. Turkey, they will do whatever they want.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. And especially there's no U.S. aid now. So that the U.S. aid is, and you said it's a soft about power, it's not a soft power, at least in the last 2 decades. People who took money from U.S. aid were involved in money crimes, even in Lebanon. Yani, U.S. aid was a soft power to change the mentality of the population to portray that the United States is the savior. And even if there's bombs coming to your land and killing your people from a U.S. warplane and from a U.S. decision, you'll look and say it's raining. Yeah, I'm very happy. That's the role of U.S. aid, to make the United States and this ally be portrayed in the media and the mentality of the population that they are the good guys. That's the U.S. aid. Trump doesn't need this anymore. For him, he has the most powerful military and the most powerful economy, and he's trying to do these through these two powers, and it will not work. It will only work, unfortunately, in the Arab world, because in our world we have donkeys. We don't have people that were elected because they love their people or their country. We have people that are ruling us because they were appointed by the United States or Israel. That's the only thing. Maybe there's an exception or two, but these two exceptions doesn't change anything. Or because his father was a king like 50 years ago. That's what we have here. Nobody will say anything to Trump. Trump will rule through like a 10th operator in the United States foreign policy building or whatever. He will rule all the Arab world without anybody fighting him or even resisting anything. And of course, Netanyahu, he already rules now the whole Arab world. So that's the situation what we are in. And the only thing that is dangerous for Israel, according to both Netanyahu and his opposition, is Iran. And they will go after Iran.
Okay, I just want to say also you have to consider that Trump was very much more belligerent towards Iran in not just talk, but in action in his first term. He not only greenlit the assassination of Iranian IRGC or Quds Force General Qasem Soleimani and his Iraqi counterpart, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. But when Iran shot down the Golden Hawk, the state-of-the-art U.S. stealth drone that cost something like $200 million a piece, the U.S. did not respond to that. When Iran launched 24 ballistic missiles into U.S. military bases in Iraq, Trump did not respond to that. The Pentagon has always been a party that is held back when there have been political and jingoistic calls to bomb Iran for good reason. They have exercised and gamed war scenarios with Iran ad nauseum and are always the ones who push back against any administration that wants to get into a military confrontation with Iran. I think Trump learned that from his experience in part one. Here's a question. He's coming out in his second term with diplomacy first with Iran. We could do a deal with Iran. He's not saying nasty things about Iran anymore. Is that just a feint in order to have the Iranians take their eye off the ball when he launches something with Israel? Or is it genuine because he realizes, hey, I can make a deal even if it's the same damn deal as the 2015 nuclear deal, but I'll just spin it to be like the Trump deal, and shutter that case. Take that pile of papers off my desk because Netanyahu has led me on a wild goose chase before. We don't know. But for you to say, Karim, that all of this is going to happen based on just pure negativity.
Not pure negative. I want to comment, Charmaine, and it's not negative. It's a realistic thing that I will say now.
Okay.
It might piss off some people, but these words should be heard by by the Iranians before they are heard by the Israelis or the Americans. And it's not negativity. I think I say it. I have the ability to put my place in like the mind of an Israeli or Iranian or a Western or even Lebanese with all the sects. So if I was from the West and Israeli, I will strike Iran and I will not be afraid from Iran. So first, let's go back. You said Qasem Soleimani. The price of Qasem Soleimani is not equal to a drone in the sky. The United States can print money. If you tell me, if you down for me like some drones, but I can kill your ultimate leader. Okay, down some drones, and I will kill the ultimate leader. Sorry. And second, you mentioned that they bombed the Ain al-Assad. It was a huge thing, and I acknowledge it was a huge thing. But also, it's a small price for Soleimani. And let's go back. Who's Soleimani? Soleimani was affecting the Israelis, not the Americans. Soleimani was the leader of Quds Force. Quds Force, he used to recruit and train people how to handle Israel and how to bomb Israel. He was not handling people who wants to go to the Atlantic and bomb the United States. And the United States killed them on behalf of the Israelis. And Trump said that the Israelis betrayed us. We were going to make this operation with the Israelis, and the last minute they canceled it, but I don't care, and I killed them. That's what Trump said. That's number one. Number two, Sharmeen, if I was an Israeli or an American and I saw how the acts of resistance and Iran acted during the 7th of October, I will go bomb Iran every day. Mm-hmm. Because if they have the same mentality that we saw, okay, and we have the promise 3 or whatever the number is, okay, and they promised regarding that during the war in Lebanon, and they didn't bomb. One bombing from Iran would help Hezbollah. No, I will go bomb Iran. It's not like something very, very dangerous to do if they have the same mentality, because Hezbollah and the Syrians and the Yemenis, they were all have the Iranian mentality. That's one. And the biggest one is that you mentioned the war games. The war games, Sharmi, happened in 2002, and the United States lost against Iran, and they tried to manipulate the game so they can win, and they lost again. Yes,
no, Karim, that was one war game. I'm saying they're constantly war gaming. That was the biggest war game the U.S. military has put on to date. Yeah, it's not the only war game. They're war gaming all the time.
Yes, but this is the biggest one, Sharmeen, was in 2002. Yeah. Yes, and we usually refer to this one, 2002. And if we add 4 years, it's 2006. Hezbollah was able to defeat Israel, I think, easily in 2006, but failed to do so in 2025. The same applies to Iran. Iran has the same technology. Okay, maybe if they went with a war with Iran in the early 2000s, they might lose. But now, after what we saw, I don't think either they have to change the mentality, the Iranians and their fighters, or I don't think they can win, because I'm 100% sure there's a technology that we still don't know. It's not every single person is saying, oh, there's spies against Hezbollah or people portray Hezbollah. The thing is bigger than that. There's a technology that exists now that we don't know about. Same as GPS, we knew about it later on. Same about many things that the general people knew about, like maybe 20, 30 years before the military was using. I am convinced about this. Maybe there's plane that can scan everything, as there's plane that can scan petroleum in deep of the ocean. I think that they see everything underground. So if Iran doesn't have counter for this technology, which I am speculating, that it can't win.
Okay, Karim, it's great speculating, but that you can't do analysis on the basis of that. So you have the worst case scenario built into your head, and that's fine. You think that this axis has lost, all right? I'm not saying I think this axis has taken hits. It's lost some and it's won some, okay? I think the narrative is such a great global narrative of defeat that has been imposed on the general public, that psychologically, in the psychological warfare, they have won. But it doesn't undermine the fact that Iran has the same abilities and the same technologies and the same weapon system as it did before, that for decades has deterred the Americans and Israelis. If they have a way to counter that, then I'm sure we'll see it.
But that's what I said.
But Karim, at the same time that they had intelligence and AI technologies in order to identify.
No. Technology, waves or whatever.
I'm saying AI intelligence gathering. We know that they had the use of AI to very swiftly match a massive load of data, okay, within seconds or minutes or days, right? This is for sure. If we can't, we know that. We can't speculate about a super weapon, shooting lasers out of its eyes if we don't know about it. Don't also forget that their state-of-the-art weapons, the Arrow missile defense and the Iron Dome and others, were not sufficient in technology to handle the warfare from non-state actors. So you can think they're masters of the universe in technology and know-how, but at the same time, we saw them very deficient in things that they had been lauding for decades. So you cannot assume all this, and you cannot assume that
I will leave a link in this video for a technology. It's a YouTube video that was released 10 years ago.
Spare us. We're the Cradle. We're journalists, okay? We're not like...
That don't believe me, you'll see a link for a study that was conducted in a university in the United States that can see and hear people and even calculate the heartbeat, and that know if you are standing or sitting down in a room, okay, through Wi-Fi waves. Okay, I'm not like having a ball and like.
But you kind of are, because the application of that accurately obviously didn't happen in Gaza. Okay, it obviously hasn't happened in Yemen. Not saying crazy sci-fi technology doesn't exist out there. I'm saying you cannot analyze on the basis that you believe in your gut they have that, when they've shown that their state-of-the-art military technology doesn't work. We're not going to agree. Let Esteban have a word here.
No, first of all, what I wanted to say is don't forget Israel's unit, what is it, 9900? The one that is actually working with AI and is actually, the one that was essentially, according to them, behind what happened in Lebanon, right? With the pager terror attacks, with the killing of Nasrallah, with the killing of all the first and second line commanders of Hezbollah, and essentially I don't want to say crippling, but I don't know what other word to use, of the Lebanese resistance. This level of intelligence gathering, this is something we discussed before. But I think, as Charmaine is saying, we can only speculate so far. And I think there have been lessons that have been learned since 7th of October. What I wanted to ask you guys actually was, there is, Netanyahu's meeting with Trump. But now we're hearing also that either the UAE or Saudi Arabia are going to be host to the first meeting between, I don't know if this is actually the first meeting, but, of in this presidency between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, right? And considering this, Iran and Russia signed that deal, remember, just a few weeks ago, that was being hailed as this big strategic cooperation deal in many fields, but possibly the most important in defense, right? There is no mutual defense clause, but there is a clause that talks about not backing an aggressor, right? So if Russia gets attacked, Iran cannot back the aggressor. Same way, vice versa. If Trump is sitting down with Putin in a few weeks, is it as likely for us to expect that the United States is actually going to go and escalate a war in West Asia against Iran, against a strategic partner of Russia, not just of Russia, of China as well? Consider this: Trump levies tariffs of 25% on its closest partners, Mexico and Canada, and then chooses to levy tariffs of just 10% on China. So I think there's more balls up in the air than we are that we are realizing still at this point.
He's not coming militaristically against China in the way, his previous rhetoric, anti-China, China has suggested, because he also, if you look at all U.S. government pages, I saw some social media posts on this, a lot of stuff has been taken down, and the only thing, that is apparently on these pages is that the U.S. recognizes the one China policy. And so that's a real backtracking from the Biden administration and even the Obama administration of starting to work with Taiwan in provocative ways, from Nancy Pelosi flying over and landing there to, increased aid and military cooperation, et cetera. Trump seems to have dumped all that. He's like, yeah, one China policy, next. So I do think he sees China as a big moneymaker, and I'm sure as a businessman, he wants a part of that. So he's going to try that first before he comes head on for them. At the same time, he obviously sees his European and other allies as a dollar drain, which is why he's coming for his friends. Let's not sort of ignore his own words and actions to come up with extreme theories on what he could do and then frame that as what he's going to do. I don't think it's like that. If you just think of his essence as he doesn't want to spend money on stuff he doesn't want to spend money on. One of those things is war. Another one is in foreign countries. He doesn't want to spend money there. He wants foreign countries to pay him. I mean, don't forget what the Saudis also did by offering up Trump $600 billion just like that without anything being negotiated or hammered out. Is not just a slavish Saudi Arabia, but it's very also likely that it's Mohammed bin Salman saying, I'm giving you this money. Don't even start with the pressure on us. Do you know what I mean? Because the money's promised, right? It doesn't pour in. It comes in incrementally. So he wants to say, we can do business and you can have a lot of it. But don't come at us with things that are going to undermine us in our region and among our people and globally.
That really makes sense.
The thing that $600 already undermined them in front of their people because they gave $600 billion for nothing.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Don't forget, it's a very early buyout of Trump as well.
Where does that leave Iran, though? I think pragmatically, if Trump is willing to, de-escalate in a sense with China, and especially sit down with the Russian president, something, unthinkable over the past 4 years. No. Consider the U.S. president and the Russian president sitting up face to face. Iran is a strategic partner of these nations, is a member of BRICS.
Yeah.
It's a major player here in the region, regardless of what anyone may want to say or believe. It still is. What are we seeing? Are we seeing maybe Iran being set up for a fall? I mean, I wouldn't put past that,
It could go both ways, but I don't think it'll start with military. I think we will see, just to point out that the U.S. doesn't generally bomb major countries or countries that take a lot of newspaper space until they set the scene for it first, okay? Of course, Trump is not like the, business as usual, but usually they set up a case for a country, claiming countries crossing lines and undermining something or coming, taking a hostile posture towards the U.S. before they do anything. So if Trump is, he has this warm and fuzzy language, meaning looking at using soft power and diplomacy with Iran, rather than hard power, I think he will expend some energy there before he switches to another mode of pressurizing Iran.
Remember that the first thing he did when coming to office was lift the security details of Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, who, according to U.S. intelligence, were the target of Iranian assassination plots. So, I don't know, like, it seems...
Okay, I don't think it's a strategic partnership between Iran and Russia. Iran and Russia strategic partnership only dates back like to 15 years or 20 years maximum. And recently they started to talk about it as if it's strategic. The real strategic partner in the region was Syria. Syria is a strategic partner with Russia since the 60s. That's over 68 years. And they betrayed it in one click. And they can do the same with Iran. And why he's willing to sit with Russia and not Iran? Because Iran has an enemy, and the enemy is the whole Gulf country and Egypt and Jordan. These countries are beloved by Trump, and of course Israel, the ultimate super girlfriend for the United States, if we can say it. So there's many reasons to fight Iran, but there is no reason to fight Russia. Russia has no enemy. Russia was the enemy of the United States. It was portrayed in movies and by the politics just to maintain their supremacy in the world. Actually, if you think about it, Russia has no enemies. Ukraine was created because of the policy that was achieved by the United States in 2014 when they replaced everything, and this happened. But historically, there's no enemies for Russia. And also China is a different thing, that he will maintain this against China. I'm talking about Trump because there's Taiwan. Taiwan is the hub of the technology of the whole world, and it's controlled by the United States. The moment the United States becomes weaker, China will take over, even without military. Because if I am Taiwanese and I'm saying, oh, China now is more powerful than the United States, or I can make money there, why should I care about the United States? So that's why the United States will remain or will act as an enemy against China, because there's a reason to do so, but it has no reason to act as an enemy against Russia. And of course, it will remain acting against or even accomplishing things like war or like strategic bombing or whatever they name it, or another Masa Amini will like pop up from nowhere against Iran.
I mean, look, if the deep state has its way, definitely hostility, belligerence towards Iran would continue. But to your point, Esteban, when he came in and he removed the security detail and security clearance for Mike Pompeo, former White House advisor Brian Hook, and others, I think 50 others, this was important for two reasons. There's two qualities and characteristics of Trump that it explains and fits right in with. A, when Trump decides to pick on you and it gets personal, he won't let up, all right? And Pompeo is viewed by Trump as a traitor, and the whole Iran team and the whole, the deep staters, as he would view it, just needed to be punished. They betrayed him. They betrayed his trust. The other thing is Mike Pompeo, according to the Daily Mail report from 2022, his security detail was $2 million per month. Brian Hook's was like $150,000 or something per month. That's a quick budget cut. Trump wants to save money, and he wants to make it. And he doesn't want the hard way around. He'd rather strike a deal. This is a case where soft power and diplomacy, as the president who would prefer soft power and diplomacy and exercising American strength around the world through those methods rather than starting a war, because he knows wars are, I'm sure on day one of his first presidency, when he got when he was like, oh, let's do this, let's do that to that country, how dare they talk back, whatever. And he saw the budget numbers from the Pentagon for such an operation. He went, $1 billion a day, I don't want that, So, and he's seen from Yemen and other theaters what a dollar suck those things can be, especially if they're not restrained to the initial week or 1 month period that U.S. War planners assess, but it becomes a multi-year quagmire. So I'm saying there are certain characteristics of Trump we can already very clearly see. It doesn't mean we can tell you what decision he'll make every time. because we don't know all the factors involved, but one is he's quite vengeful, okay, against individuals that he feel have slighted him. He's very concerned with not spending money on others, and he's very concerned with making money in order to score wins. When he talks about Netanyahu's bad PR from the war on Gaza, he's like, this is unwinnable because, like, people hate you, right? You got to score wins in Trump's mind. That means do something that you can shove down people's throats as a winning narrative, all right? So Trump wants deals, no money spent, maybe money comes in and he can be like, I'm so great, I'm the greatest president alive. That's at his essence what he wants. Yeah, Allah. That's at his essence what he wants. Now you can argue all these things. Netanyahu has his ear. I could give you reasons why Netanyahu wouldn't have his ear in the same way he did in the first administration of Trump's. And, you know, they have a secret weapon. I can make the argument that a lot of their, you know, much ballyhooed weapons turned out to be not much. Please, let's not prognosticate about things we couldn't possibly know. Let's look at the characteristics. To be honest, I think we've done what the Cradle hates to do, spending way too much attention on the Americans, because as we believe here, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to witness it, did it make a sound? If you don't report about every American fart and decision all day long, your readers are going to realize that the U.S. isn't instrumental in everything. And in fact, there are many global actors who have a bigger impact on West Asia every single day. So let's veer from this and go talk about, like, the Gaza ceasefire, what's going to happen in stage 2. Let's talk about the enormous escalation in the West Bank that we're seeing now, and the absolute collusion of the Palestinian Authority with Israeli occupation forces. You know, and the myriad other things. Ahmed Shara, the self-proclaimed, okay, caliph/president of Syria, unelected, okay, with no intention of holding elections for another 4 years, was in Saudi Arabia yesterday, meeting with Mohammed bin Salman. He's in Turkey today.
I want to say just one thing that about Syria in particular. That's where I wanted us to go before, because I agree with you, Sharmin. Enough with the empire. You know, the empire is going to do as the empire does, and that is fall at the end of the day. But in Syria, it's just it's becoming very ridiculous. Honestly, you know, it's like at some point you cannot separate, you know, an onion headline from a Syria headline now, because last week the military committee, the group that is currently governing Syria, they dissolved the constitution, they dissolved the People's Assembly, they dissolved all the military
Parliament. Yeah.
Parliament. Yes, they dissolved all armed factions, including Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is Ahmad al-Shara's baby, former Al-Qaeda in Syria, named Ashara president in a transitional phase that has no end date. That there's no details exactly how this is going to transition into a democracy, transition into elections, or into a new constitution, all at the same time as chaos is continuing to engulf Syria. We've had multiple reports. We had a very, I would direct your readers to a very interesting article last week that we published about who the people in the Syrian government are, who these cabinet ministers are, and who Shara is, you know. ISIS upon ISIS. We've also been reporting on the sectarian killings of Alawites, of Shiites. Just today, a few hours ago, there was a huge terror attack in Manbij, in the north of Syria, where the Turks, as you said, Sharmin, a few minutes ago, are planning apparently now to establish military bases where their militias have been fighting against the U.S.-backed Kurds to take control of the east of Aleppo, to take control of even further east, up to where the ISIS camps, the ISIS prisons are. I mean, Israel is in the south, occupying Quneitra, occupying Deraa. We are seeing now even the rise of our Syrian resistance faction, right? The Islamic Resistance Front in Syria. I think they're calling themselves. They opened fire on Israeli troops just a few days ago, caught the Israelis completely by surprise. You know, Syria is really descending into, you know, you were just saying we cannot predict, or we cannot, you know, make speculations about things that we don't know. In Syria, things are changing by the minute almost, right? Right now they're implementing neoliberal reforms. We have ISIS by way of the Chicago Boys, right? Mass layoffs, the privatization of national industries, etc. What is going to happen?
On the paper, Islama is changing by the minute, but on the ground, there's still people are being killed, especially in west of Syria by armed groups. I don't know if they are the army now because according to Sharia, there is no armed groups anymore. Who's killing these people? Many things are being looted. Israel is doing whatever it wants in the south. The SDF, which are the Kurdish armed groups, are still like bombing in northwest Syria, and still Syrians are being killed there against the Kurdish army groups, and Turkey is even bombing northern of Syria. So on the so on the ground, for me, I'm seeing as if it's the second day of the fall of Bashar al-Assad. On paper, yeah, Syria now is the best country in the world, but go there and see. You still the gas there. The price of the gas is very expensive. The food is very expensive. And as we said 2 weeks or three episodes ago, now Syria is living like the Turkish dream. They think they are Turkish, especially that people that are with Julani or Al-Sharia, whatever you want to name. But the people that used to go to the government, an army commander, a highly educated person, a woman that doesn't have a scarf, but for instance, she's a lawyer or whatever. These people have no place in Syria currently. I don't care what the media tells you, but that's what's happening now. I saw a photo of Al-Sharia in Mecca. He's wearing the white scarf. And it's hilarious. I didn't know. My brain froze. Do I cry or laugh? I did both. When I laugh, there's a person that killed or not only killed too many people, a guy who did this for Islam. The worst thing that happened in Islam, in history of Islam, is ISIS and Nusra and these people. And he's the head of them. And he was a wing in Iraq, and he made Nusra, and now he's going to Mecca, and people are clapping for him again because Arabs, they are not well educated, and not in science, but in politics and in history. If you are educated enough, this won't happen. This is the new reality.
I just want to point out to a little exclusive from the Cradle last week in an article we published. Our source, which we did not disclose and will not disclose, actually happens to be an HTS person who is concerned about these mass killings, okay, and who brought it up directly with Ahmed al-Shara about the extrajudicial killings, kidnappings, torture, beatings of members of the Alawite community, Christians, and other minority groups. When asked about atrocities in Syria, Ahmed Shara told his colleague, who told us, quote, "This is normal and may continue for 2 or 3 years." He doesn't mind, okay? Now, if you'd ask USAID or the National Endowment for Democracies, right, and NED, they would say, he's on the record saying that he's going to protect Syrian minorities. The fact that he's put off the constitution, preparing another constitution for another 3 years and actual elections for at least 4 years is just part of the process. Syria has to get its act together. Trump got rid of this. And instead, what we heard was Tulsi Gabbard, who's going to, who he's nominated to be head of all U.S. intelligence. And we know he doesn't think much of the FBI and CIA's little side operations, right? They should be gathering intelligence and not carrying out operations and becoming a secret arm of the state that is uncontrolled. Tulsi Gabbard got up and in front of, during her testimony and, when she's being peppered by senators on, what she would do as the head of U.S. intelligence, she came out clearly saying that the people governing Syria now are part of Al-Qaeda. She said, Al-Qaeda is our enemy. There's no good Al-Qaeda. I'm obviously paraphrasing here. But she was so definitive about it. I'm sure the senators who were asking questions were stunned by her candor. But I suspect her candor comes from being backed up by this president on these kinds of issues. Do you know what I mean? It's not coming out of like a vacuum. She has, some people have said, backtracked a bit from her statements back in, during the Syrian war after she'd met with Assad and made a trip to Syria, where she said that the people we're supporting in Syria are Al-Qaeda and they're all terrorists. But today, as firmly as ever, she stuck to her guns. So the other thing I would note about Syria is this whole narrative of like, oh my God, they came in and swept through Syria in 11 days, took Damascus, Assad ran for his life, so did many of his people in government, and these guys are going to turn Syria around. This doesn't look like that now, does it? With early promises by the West, who supported these terror factions, to help alleviate some of Syria's woes, economic woes. So before, where you had gas and fuel and electricity and food, in minimal amounts, but you had them, you could guarantee them. There are areas that don't have any of this now, or are getting to the place where they don't have any of this now. However, the point is, it's quickly disintegrated into a very, very grim picture of Syria's political and economic and security future. Hence these trips to Saudi Arabia, and then followed by a trip to Turkey right after. Now, it's worth pointing out that Ahmed al-Shara and HTS have been Turkish and Qatari backed from the get-go. Turkey can't bankroll the economic turnaround of Syria, okay? But the Saudis and some of their Gulf allies can lead the way. So there is hostility between Turkey and Saudi Arabia, no matter what they say. They both want to be caliphs of the Sunni world. And this is something we've seen since 2011, the start of the Arab Spring. It was like Sunni versus Sunni, the Saudis versus the Qataris versus the Turks versus the Emiratis versus the Egyptian, all vying to be, king of the Sunni world in these various so-called revolutions in various key strategic Arab states. Now, the Turks and the Qataris have won this round. Even if Saudis aren't as concerned about Turkey, they will be super concerned about Qatar, who they've always viewed as a frenemy. Okay, and Saudi Arabia led the way during Trump's first term to besiege Qatar completely, and the only two countries that helped it at the time were the Iranians and the Qatar and the Turks.
Why should they help?
Because Ahmed al-Shara is saying, maybe he's saying to the Saudis, we will give you a bigger foothold than the Turks even in this country. If you come in, it's deal-making phase. The Turks aren't going to be, the Saudis aren't going to be that stupid there. Maybe they believe they can turn Syria into a Saudi playground. At the same time, they know Qatar and Syria have a long-time project of pipelining Qatari gas, okay, one of the biggest gas producers in the world, directly to Europe via Syria, via Turkey. And they need Saudi territory for these pipelines at the moment to go through. So the Saudis hold a lot of cards, and they will exercise them and show these cards in their dealings with the Syrian leadership to gain maximally and try to deny their frenemies the benefits. At the same time, HTS is forever indebted to the Turks and the Qataris. So the power play will be, these leverages both sides have will be used to win a battle of political win in Syria. But I think at extended economic cost to Syria, we're not going to see the Saudis bankrolling Syria meaningfully in any way soon. And I want to point out, even if they say they do, don't expect the funds to get there. Not for the first few months, maybe not for the first few years. I say this because I have personal information from repeated visits to Jordan last decade, in which the Saudis, having promised money, would just deny Jordan. Jordan had to dance a jig for the Saudis to get any money. The purse strings actually opened for them. So, of course, and the Saudis and Jordanians are close friends for a long time. Of course, they're going to play that same game with Syria. But in the meantime, Syria's economic situation is going to deteriorate. There's no way, no how HTS and its allies, okay, that did the swift overthrow of Damascus and whose numbers cannot amount to more than 50,000 troops, can possibly, with no economy and no treasure chest, cannot assure security in any part of Syria, okay? Hence,
I mean, they're going from sanctions to shock therapy, neoliberal shock therapy.
Yeah, but hence the emergence of resistance, because actually it's not that hard. It's not as hard as they thought it would be. So I think what people were saying, like this grand win, slam dunk, Assad's out, Syria is going to rise again. Not so fast.
So before we wrap up for this week, we've been making mention to this throughout this episode, and that is the situation in the West Bank, where, as we said before, it seems the Israeli army is effectively moving their shifting, not shifting, that's the wrong word, just moving their strategy from Gaza to the West Bank the same. We saw these images in Jenin, the destruction of an entire residential neighborhood. Last week, Palestinian authorities were saying 20,000 people were displaced from Jenin. Today, we're hearing about 3,000 displaced from Jenin, from Tulkarem, from Tubas. Tanks rolling into the occupied West Bank for certain areas of the occupied West Bank for the first time since the first Intifada. We are seeing the complete fall of the West Bank into chaos at the hands of the Israelis and at the hands of the Palestinian Authority, who, according to some reports, right, Middle East Eye has had a couple of reports, one of them saying that the Palestinian Authority is ready to go to war with Hamas, to clash with Hamas in order to not be left out of Gaza. The other one saying that what's happening in Jenin, in particular, right, with the Palestinian Authority, it's a show. It's a show for the U.S. as well. It's a Palestinian Authority being like, look, we can actually, dismantle terrorism in the West Bank. So trust us to go to Gaza. Do not leave us out in the cold, especially now that USAID is, long and gone. So as far as what's happening, in the West Bank, I don't see a way that there's any, backtracking. As you were saying, despite, even if the Saudis say, oh, we need a Palestinian state as whatever to normalize with Israel, I feel like they're willing to just look on, and call it something else, just like in Gaza, right? Like now Gaza, it seems that the death toll in Gaza has exploded over the past couple of weeks. It went from like 48,000. Yesterday they were talking about 60,000.
Yeah.
And it's just going to continue to go up. And no repercussions, no sanctions, no, diplomatic, no cut of diplomatic ties, nothing. It's just, let's just continue on and be partners with Israel.
So, I mean, whereas the activities in the West Bank didn't focus on Jenin initially, and the refugee camp in particular, which is Jenin has always been a stronghold of Palestinian resistance, even after Oslo and the capitulation of the Palestinian Authority entirely to Israel's wishes. Jenin became a focus, but now the Israelis have used this as an opportunity to go wild, okay? Like batshit wild on Palestinians, because they saw that if you kill enough people in Gaza, those numbers rack up. And so on day one, people are like, this child died, and you have the name in the picture, and this woman died, and this pregnant mother, this old man. And then by day 20, it's like, 20 people died. And, so they know that people tire from daily casualty counts, and they're ratcheting up those numbers in the West Bank and going far and beyond anything they've done in forever in the West Bank. So the operations, the Palestinian Authority absolutely has no way to say that we can handle this ourselves, because they actually withdrew from Jenin to let now for a number of days to let the Israelis come in and, bombard. We're seeing airstrikes, drone strikes. The mayor of Jenin, Mohammed Jarrar, says that 50% of the city's neighborhoods no longer have access to water, food, or electricity. He says the current invasion by Israeli occupation troops is the largest ever and is considered a replication of what is happening in the Gaza Strip. So completely burning down the, whatever's there. And of course, the mass displacement of families and civilians in the area. Here's the thing. If Saudis want a Palestinian state and require that, okay, at least even on paper with a solid deal before it actually manifests, there's no way, no how any cabinet of Netanyahu's or even regular Likud will greenlight this, will allow this. Either the Saudis will have to swallow their promises, or there's not going to be a normalization deal. Because what the Netanyahu government is essentially doing in the West Bank is using the momentum they gained from Gaza domestically to run riot through the West Bank. So what happened in Jenin is now spreading, and Israeli officials have said we will go anywhere we want in the West Bank, from Jenin, Tubas, Nablus, Tulkarem, Hebron, Bethlehem, And in reaction, of course, resistance that is taking a lot of hits grows, as we saw in the Gaza Strip. People get galvanized when they see the destruction, the fact that the enemy has no value for their life, their dignity, them, even as humans. It galvanizes the population that sort of like cruised maybe before, and that's, I think we're going to see more of that. We're going to see more lone wolf operations. We're going to see more cells emerge. We're going to find more cunning ways of getting weapons funneled to these groups. And of course, at every opportunity, Israel's going to hit harder and harder. So a ceasefire in Gaza, as we predicted, because Karim, that was a reasonable analysis, because the Netanyahu government only likes wars and doesn't know how to stop and doesn't want to stop, will only take attention away from Gaza if it can redirect militarization and destruction elsewhere. And so we said the West Bank is going to escalate, which is what's happened, probably escalate against Yemen as well, and try to show some wins in Syria and in Lebanon. But as for a Gaza ceasefire, we're really going to have to wait to see what comes out of the Netanyahu-Trump meeting, because, according to some Israeli media, one of the things that Netanyahu absolutely needs the U.S. to guarantee for him in order for him to contain the most extremist elements of his cabinet is that Hamas will not rule, once the ceasefire is done with, okay? And I don't know how the U.S. could guarantee that.
How can they? I don't think so either. I think, as we have said before in this podcast, Hamas, just like Hezbollah in Lebanon, they're part of the social fabric. You're not just talking about however they want to be portrayed.
Yeah.
They can try even the whole plan of trying to push the Palestinians into Egypt, into Jordan. That is something that Trump keeps bringing up and keeps saying as if it's a fact, right? Like, they are going to do it. They are going to do it. They are going to take the Palestinians. Well, how is he going to do it? That's actually what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Well, I said it last year, and I said also the Europeans will take bunch of Palestinians, and nobody in the region can say no to the United States, especially Egypt and Jordan. And Sharmin also mentioned that Saudi Arabia, they want two-state solution. They don't want anything. When Trump tells them sign, they will sign. They don't care about the Palestinians. Al Saud, the family of Al Saud, people won't understand, because you can't read Arabic. You won't understand the hatred of Al Saud to Palestinians. They don't want them. It's the same. They share the same
Karim,
mentality as the Israelis. Yes, Sharmin.
for 5 years, the U.S. administrations have been telling the Saudis to sign a normalization deal with the Israelis. So in 5 years, they haven't done it.
When they did the Abraham Accord.
The Abraham Accords was in 2020, okay?
Let me remind. I can remind the viewer. In 2020, the UAE said that we will sign the Abraham Accord, so the Israelis will be less harsh on the Palestinians. Look what happened. That was only selling words.
An excuse.
Then Bahrain said the same thing, and then Morocco followed, and then Sudan followed, and then the turn of Saudi Arabia came, and Trump didn't win the election. That's it.
No, Kenny, the Saudis were targeted from day one.
I want to clarify a thing. People, please, if you won't believe me, if you don't believe me, Saudi Arabia can't care less for two-state solution. They don't care about the Palestinian people or the resistance or anything. Saudi Arabia, when Trump tells them, hello, sign, they will sign. They don't need anything. The only thing they might demand is to put like a nuclear facility inside Saudi Arabia, so can they show off like against Iran or other countries. That's the mentality of Saudi Arabia. If you don't believe me, nobody knows anything about Saudi Arabia, learn Arabic, read some history, and then go to Twitter and listen what people say on the national TV of Saudi Arabia, and see the people that are funded by Saudi Arabia, what they say on Twitter, and then come and tell me, no, that's not the fact.
Karim, I was not talking about how the Saudi government feels about Palestinians or how Wahhabis feel about Palestinians. I was saying, just simply in response to your claim that any time the Americans tell the Saudis to normalize with Israel, they will. I am pointing out to you that clearly in 5 years, they haven't. The Saudis also have...
There was no Trump in the past 5 years.
No, when the Abraham Accords happened, there was Trump. The Saudis refused to be part of it, okay? The Saudis have... I'm not talking about their emotions about Palestinians at all.
That's an analysis that they refused.
Karim, the Saudis try to position themselves, okay, as fathers and godfathers of all Muslims around the world, and they know there's a lot of Muslim hostility to Israel, okay? So they will have to have a gain. Now, the provision of nuclear reactors to Saudi Arabia was something that was, more or less ironed out during the Biden administration's 4 years of trying to get 4 years, stated 4 years of trying to get Saudi to normalize with the Israelis, okay? And the Saudis didn't. They have consistently said there has to be a Palestinian state, or at least a guarantee of a Palestinian state, a pathway to it before we normalize. Now, having said that, knowing that global Muslims, and a lot of the West, by the way, are against Israel, the narrative, the global narrative is spun against Israel, actually gives the Saudis some leverage, which maybe they wouldn't have had before. So I think a fair analysis would be they've held out for 4 or 5 years. They're going to hold out for something significant that they can claim as a victory for Arabs and Muslims. Otherwise, they just look like a bunch of shitheads,
Well, I think we can leave it there for this week. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Cradle News Roundup, the home of heated debates. So please also let us know what you think of what Karim thinks, what Sharmi thinks, what I think.
No, don't. By the way, I have to say something because we get these comments all the time, stop cutting each other off. It's how rudely you'll treat each other. Karim was employee number 2 at the Cradle, okay? Esteban was employee number 1. And literally, this is how we talk off camera and laugh and share a minutiae 2 seconds later.
We just had breakfast and we will have dinner together.
There's zero fighting off camera. We talk like this, and I think sometimes we forget not to take our normal direct communication methods onto camera. But actually, part of the Cradle is, look, this is what West Asia is, and look, this is what we are. So, like it or not.
And I think people, in the end of the day, they appreciate an honest debate, and that is what we offer to them.
I just want to ask our reviewers to please share these videos because apparently our views went down, and whenever we tackle a sensitive topic, because the videos are not being suggested by YouTube like before, so please like and share this video so people will understand what's happening in the region.
Yes, please make sure to like, make sure to share, and to subscribe, to leave a comment, and to follow us on our social media, on Telegram, on X. I believe we're no longer on Instagram again. Meta is out after the Cradle, as I tend to do. But please make sure to follow us in the channels where we are still available, and to check out our Patreon, please, where you can become a supporter of the Cradle and help us continue to do the work that we do for the Cradle News Roundup. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I have been joined by Karim Shami and Sharmit Narwan.